Thank you, Nadia. Now we're going to proceed to session 3, which is the education panel. Please welcome the moderator of education, Dr. Tania Saba.
Bienvenue au panel de l'éducation. First, allow me to start by greeting and thanking the Honorable Minister Jabbra, His Excellency Ambassador Fadi Ziadi, and Consul General Antoine Eid for putting education in Lebanon at the heart of this event. Many of us on this panel, and I'm sure present here today, are the product of this education system that marked our journey and have earned us extraordinary opportunities. So for their help in organizing the panel, I would also like to thank Mr. William Shaib, who is Chief of Staff and Associate Vice President, International Affairs at Concordia University, Rania, who is Head of Human Capital, and Tania Farhad from the Lebanese General Consulate. The theme for the panel this year was building on Canadian, American, and Lebanese experiences to debate whether Lebanese graduates are ready to embrace the evolving tech-driven workplace and looking at the impact of artificial intelligence and new technology on higher education. It appeared to us as a topic of great importance, even of great urgency. It is also a theme that appeals as much to people from the businesses, from the business community, as much as representatives from academia. How so? Okay. Businesses and the labor market are struggling with major challenges in terms of basic skills, reading, counting, and the ability to solve problems through technology. Artificial intelligence is catching us with us humans. The OECD considers that on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being only the ability to read simple things and to add numbers, 5 the ability to make inferences and interpretations, artificial intelligence capabilities are at 3. Some of us would consider this as good news, maybe until we learn that 80% of the population of the OECD countries does not reach level 3, so time is running up. Jobs are at risk. Automation, deep and machine learning will undoubtedly add to the polarization of jobs that was instilled by the technological revolution that took place in the 70s. It divided jobs between high-skilled, in high demand, and low-skilled with poor working conditions. It is highly likely that low-skilled jobs will completely be replaced by automation. We have to anticipate skills needs and train for high-skilled jobs. 3, the composition of the workforce continues to face challenges in accessing to take the digital shift. Among others are the fact that access to education system still largely depends on financial capacities and social status. Representation of women, who make up for half the workforce, is still weak in science, technology, engineering, and math fields. The aging of the population enhances the risk of knowledge obsolescence, and inequality in access to certain jobs still predominates. We need to think of ways to lift these barriers. Government should strengthen or build new infrastructures to enhance the capacity of organization, allowing them to play their full role in the global value chains, thereby retaining skills. If not, you train for high skills, but you get brain drain. And the most difficult of it all is not being able to anticipate the speed of the transformations nor their extent, even by artificial intelligence researchers themselves. So I'm going to welcome now, please, the panelists, so to present them, if they're ready. So in composing the panel, I had the great pleasure and was very honored to invite Mrs. Rola Dagher, President of Cisco Canada, Mrs. Rania Ghorayeb, Senior Vice President at Caisse de dépôt et de placement du Québec. They will start the discussions by sharing with us the sense of transformations that affect skills and employment in their business sectors. To assess how and why universities have no choice but to rethink education systems and take the turn of the fourth industrial revolution, I have had the great pleasure and honor in inviting as keynote panelists Dr. Joseph Jabbra, President of LAU, Dr. Alan Shepard, President of Concordia University, Dr. Steve Harvey, Dean of Leon School of Business at the AUB. We have adopted Dr. Harvey. And Dr. Nadia Naffi, a specialist in educational technologies and professor at Concordia. Dr. Nada Mariani, Vice President at NY Institute of Technology, was supposed to be with us this morning due to an urgent matter. She unfortunately could not make it. However, she did send me her notes, so we might have some questions there coming from her insights. Please take place. So what the representatives from the university will be discussing, for one, investments in artificial intelligence research and resources are massive. How can research results inform content and teaching methods? For two, new learning content must transcend cognitive knowledge and basic knowledge. What are these contents? More multidisciplinarity, more hands-on experience? For three, rethinking learning spaces to support teaching, research, and creative activities, and to implement new educational pedagogy. How do we achieve this? And four, making partnerships and civic engagement an integral part of training. Which ones and how? So do you think I'm asking too much of our panelists? Wait until you find out that each panelist will only have 7 minutes to do it. They have generously agreed to the rules of the game and will kindly allow also maybe a few minutes if you have any questions at the end of the panel. So let us begin. So, Rola, thank you for being here. You are the head of a prominent high-tech company. Yep. I'm sure dealing a lot with the transformations that I was talking about in terms of skills, in terms of employment, in terms of work in your sector. So we would like to hear that and maybe some grasp of what are your expectations from the universities to help go through all these transformations.
Awesome question, and I'm glad you started with me. So first, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's an honor to address all of you. My question is, I'm not sure what people had for lunch, but most of them probably went back to their hotel for a nap because I saw somebody outside. So great to be here. I heard the keynote this morning was absolutely amazing. We live in a digital intelligent world. As a leader in a technology industry, we're at the crossroad where technology is actually impacting human progress. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, push it. Yeah, there you go.
How about now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I'm loud. Okay, much better? So we are at the intersection of technology and human progress. It's very simple. The foundation and the heart of everything we're going through right now is technology. If you don't disrupt, you get disrupted. Healthcare is being disrupted, professional, education, in every industry in the world, either you're in the surrounding Middle East or in North America, technology is going to hit you. You're either on the train or off the train. So for me, as a leader in technology, we have to adopt really fast. We're in the fourth industrial revolution, as you said. You look at the first and the second and the third industrial revolution. What we had that was very advantageous between all three is time. So they had about 50 years in between to make the transformation. Well, guess what? The fourth industrial revolution is here right now, and we have no time, and we need to act quickly. I look at the education sector, and I see we're way behind. We're behind because we're not adopting technology as quick as we need to be. I'll give you an example where kids today, how many of you have kids in the room? All of us. They communicate through technology. If you don't, at least in every single household, you'll have about 5 devices. What does that mean? 65% of jobs will not exist in the next 15 to 20 years. I have 10 nieces and nephews, and if I ask my 9-year-old Madeline niece, what do you want to be when you grow up? The question is irrelevant. You know what? Because 15 years from now, that job will not exist. So what does that mean? I look at Lebanon in terms of the education. We have one of the best universities in the Middle East, the top 10 universities worldwide when it comes to quality in education. What we need is that infrastructure to help our kids in next generation where they need to be. And if you don't use technology, we'll be obsolete.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Again, from the business sector, I will ask now Mrs. Rania Ghorayeb, who is Senior VP at the Caisse de dépôt. You know, the Caisse de dépôt et de placement du Québec is handling all the major investments in Quebec. So how do you see transformations in your sectors? And again, what are your expectancies from universities?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, basically we have $300 billion under management. And can you hear me now? Yeah, okay. So we manage $300 billion globally, so we're not just investors in Quebec, but global investors. And we are long-term investors. And when I hear Rola speaking, and people ask me what keeps me up at night, it's exactly that. It's the fact that or you're getting disrupted, or you get or you need to understand it, or you get on the train, or you're off the train. And for investors like ourselves who need to manage the liability of people for the next 50, 100 years, this is something that we're trying to grasp, but also understand how we can take advantage of this. I mean, our sectors are very wide. We're investors in many different asset classes. I am in infrastructure investment, which is basically, just to give you an idea, $20 billion of La Caisse invested in things such as airports. So Heathrow Airport is one of our investments. Eurostar is one of our investments. We invest in midstream The panel before was very interesting for me because we own a number of gas pipelines and oil pipelines worldwide, wind farms, onshore, offshore. So obviously technology affects us day in, day out. The question is, how are we going to take advantage of it? Because obviously there's a positive impact and a negative impact, like Rola mentioned. So what do we look for, and what are the advantages for us when we use AI? Question was about AI specifically, and then I'll get on to what we look for in individuals when we hire them and what universities can play a role. So how can we use AI today? Because I agree, it's not tomorrow. This is something that's happening today. It is a complete shift, and we talk about this at least 2-3 times a week about how we're going to manage this technological disruption, because it is here to stay and it's here for us to take into consideration. How can we use it? Obviously, on the short term, we are investors. So to use AI to find value creation in the transactions that we look at, additional value, creates an advantage for us to be better than our competitors. Secondly, is companies and assets in our portfolio. Obviously, you think about Heathrow, for example. You know how big Heathrow is? It's a mini city. There are 100 million people that transit through Heathrow per year. Planes, airports, planes, cars that we need to move. And if we can optimize that, and obviously AI is very useful. The pipelines, like Mr. El-Khouri spoke before, Charlie, is something that we integrate in the companies that we're invested in. So how do we maintain the pipelines, or even the trains or the ports that we're invested in? AI is at the heart of that. So it helps us become better managers of our people, not just our businesses, and our investments. But we need to recognize that this is something that's moving much faster than what we are used to. I mean, the technology is moving much faster than anything we've seen before. And we are not in the forefronts of that. The investors, we're a bit behind, and we need to stay abreast of the changes. So how do we prepare CDPQ and other investors towards that? And I look at the universities, who have a very important role to play in this. The things that we can do is directly invest in companies and understand how technology is going. Recruit in our different teams, stay informed, or through hire third-party consultants like Charlie's company that he mentioned before. The recruitment is very important, but what kind of person are we looking to recruit? We're looking for people that obviously have very deep knowledge. So the engineering and computer science facility in universities, I'm actually a graduate from engineering from Concordia, is at the heart of the deep knowledge. The deep knowledge is going to be used where in our companies? As in the analyst sectors, in third parties that we hire. Then there's also the other part, which is, the third party services, but even people internally that can act as a bridge. The bridge is somebody who is in the company, so somebody who will be hired at CDPQ, but can also understand the technology and be a connector between the company and the institutions and what's at the forefront. So these people are probably multidisciplinary people, and that have taken at least 1 or 2 classes in AI while they studied something else, such as business or social science or anything, HR. I mean, this is something that can be incorporated in the curriculum of someone in any segment other than engineering and computer science. Then the other thing that we have thought is a great way for institutions to work with the academia is to create partnerships. Partnerships between the private sector and the universities. CDPQ, for example, has invested in Mila. You probably know about Mila in Montreal. Montreal is one of the hearts of AI, and we've been at the forefronts of developing that. Ivado, as well as another development that CDPQ has been supporting. And then the other that's important is for the executives like myself and our CEOs to be abreast of the changes. Universities can also offer very short-term, specialized programs that we can attend on a yearly basis to keep us informed. So this is what we would propose for universities to think about. But the multidisciplinary student is very important. What do we look for today to be able to manage the changes? Is somebody who is who is multidisciplinary, an individual that has innovation and can think out of the box. These are the things that we look for. I see it in my team. The kids or the people who are moving faster than anybody else are the ones that are innovative and are thinking out of the box and are adaptable.
Okay. Thank you, Rana. So what we hear from the business sector, jobs that will probably not exist anymore, completely changing, lagging behind by adopting technology on part of the universities, new skills that are required, more partnerships. I would like to hear now from Dr. Jabbra, President of LAU. You have been president at LAU since 2004, so I'm sure that you have seen many major changes in the education systems. Again, you are going to be telling us a lot about what's happening in Lebanon, changing that are occurring in the higher education. So please, can you let us know what are your insights on that?
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Moderator, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As President of LAU, I have called for a revolution in higher education in Lebanon and across the Arab world. I feel very, very strongly that revolutionary reforms, changes must take place lest we become dated for society and irrelevant for the march of civilization. This is so because we are living through what we call the fourth industrial revolution, an industrial revolution that is affecting our daily lives. It is characterized by a number of very powerful instruments. The advent of robotics is upon us. The strengthening of nanotechnology is incredible. Biotechnologies and bioengineering are upon us. The Internet of the Things, the machines talking to each other, is part of our daily life. Machine learning, data analytics, and artificial intelligence. In light of these developments, not only do we have to respond to these changes, but we need to take initiatives. We need to take actions in order to guide them, in order to shape them, lest they run us amok, something that is very, very important. And I feel very, very strongly that LAU has responded in a very, very active way to these challenges. We have become the University of Innovation. We have become the University of the Future, something that is very, very important for us. And we have concretized our position by the following. First, we are establishing a culture of innovation at the university, across the university. We have established a center for innovation, and that center of innovation has two major arms. The first one is academic, and its role is to re-engineer, to re-examine the content of our curricula, as well as the mode of delivery. The times when we as faculty members, we were the high priest of education, that time has gone by. We need to become mentors. This is something that is very, very important. We need to turn the classroom into interactive classroom. Our students know as much as we do, and therefore teaching is dated. We're talking about the learning process, which is a collective process, something that is very, very important. The other arm is entrepreneurial. I think education, higher education in general, needs to have an entrepreneurial element in it, something that we have practiced at LAU so far and will continue to practice it. The second concrete action is data analytics. We feel very, very strongly that today, because of the incredible development of technologies, we have incredible amount of databases. So our responsibility, rather, our obligation, is to make sure that our students are not overwhelmed by the volume of information, but rather they need to learn how to extract from those volumes the knowledge that they need in order to participate to the advancement, to the creation of knowledge, to the dissemination of knowledge. Over and above that, we have brought down the walls of separations among the disciplines. At the present time, we ask the medical school and the School of Engineering to work together in order really to come up using artificial intelligence in order to come up with the best way, the best instruments to improve and strengthen our healthcare delivery system, something that is very, very important. Another active, activity that we're engaged in is really to turn continuing education not as it used to be an appendage to education, but rather a mainstream part of our education. If you read the data about the United States, the majority of students are continuing education students, something that is very important. What is the role of higher education in terms of providing that continuing education that is absolutely essential to the advancement of civilization, not only the advancement of knowledge, but the advancement of civilization. Over and above that, we have a challenge, and that challenge we are rising to practically. The question for us, we need, of course, to provide our students with the opportunity to become versatile, well-versed in technology, in the skills of technology. But we don't want to graduate automatons for society. We need to graduate skilled students and educated students. And the education of our students comes from the humanities, something that is very, very important. That's the challenge of universities nowadays, something that is very, very important. So LAU, ladies and gentlemen, is the world. LAU is the future. And I call upon my colleagues, not only in Lebanon, but across the Arab world, to join LAU, to become the world, to become the future for our youth, because that is not only a responsibility, that is an obligation, and be sure we're going to live up to that expectation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jabbra. And un grand merci aussi pour la défense des sciences sociales et des humanités à l'intérieur du monde, n'est-ce pas, scientifique également. Merci. Dr. Shepard, thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Head of Concordia, a hub for many, many Lebanese students. And from what I've seen, you're a lot focused on building the next generation university at Concordia. You have built a vision for that and have worked extensively on putting ahead some of these ideas. So would you like to share them with us, please?
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And after my colleagues' comments, I feel like I need a coffee break because I actually agree with most of what he said and calling on all of our colleagues across the world, actually, Arab world and the rest of the world, to rethink how higher education works. But first of all, welcome to Concordia students and alumni who might be with us today. I had a chance to visit with some of you a few minutes ago. These panels would be boring if we all agreed with each other. So I want to start by disagreeing somewhat with the comments that we began the session with the president of Cisco Canada, who said that we're way behind in the use of technology in education. I'm going to make a slightly different argument. I think we are way behind, but I would not argue that we're way behind in our use of technology so much as in the other kinds of experiences that we try to provide students and the ways in which education itself has not kept up with the rapid changes that are being required. But I'm a little bit skeptical, and I always worry a bit about that we bow down before the fourth industrial revolution without kind of thinking what exactly that might mean. So it's worth remembering when we're putting down universities as places that are way behind, It's worth remembering that most, not all, but most of the technological innovations that are disrupting our ways of life, our professions, our disciplines, and so forth, emerged from universities themselves. Universities are often the engines of the kind of innovation, not always, but often the engines of the innovation that is now being so disruptive. What we're not good at in universities, we're good at creating new ideas, doing research, partnering with institutions elsewhere, partnering with private sector companies. What we're not so good at, and this isn't too surprising, is we're not so good at looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, how might we evolve our institutions in order to meet the obligations for the next generation? I for sure agree that we have this sacred duty to prepare students for the world that's coming and not the world that we inhabited when we were students 20, 30, 40 years ago. I don't disagree with that at all, but the question is, how do you do that? I would have said some years ago that I was fairly pessimistic, that I didn't see a lot of changes in higher education with respect to the speed and the pace of change that we're introducing. But I do, in recent times, I do see some reason for optimism. And it's important to me because I love universities, as I'm sure my colleagues do, and I want to see them continue to play this fundamental, pivotal role in the preparation of the next generation, the protection of public life and civic life and so forth. One of the ways that things are changing has to do with how disciplinary boundaries are designed. And this sounds like it's inside baseball, and in a way it is. But if you take something like synthetic biology or genomics, fields that are at the forefront in which Concordia is an expert in. Those fields didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. And what I see now is more willingness among university faculty members and the next generation of faculty members to actually mix together with people in other disciplines. And you think, okay, well, so what? But actually that kind of friction, this discipline and that discipline together, is where most of the action is happening these days. And in itself, doesn't seem like a big piece, but actually getting people to reconceive of the kind of structure of how knowledge is made and communicated and researched, that matters. The second thing has to do with experiential learning. And the phrase that we're using at Concordia is called get your hands dirty. It's a very colloquial term. And the point is that students do not want to be rode up in a lecture hall, read to from their textbook, and then given a multiple choice quiz. That's not actually going to get them ready for the world that's represented by our business leaders who are on stage with me. That's not going to do it. Moreover, while they're sitting in the lecture hall, listening to you read from the textbook, they're going to start surfing the internet, or they're going to listen to Netflix, or they're going to do or they're not going to come at all. So you have to find new ways to engage people in classrooms, and you have to rethink what should happen in a classroom. What is the purpose of everyone gathering together? And how can you make the most of that opportunity in ways that we haven't historically done? So, for example, get your hands dirty might mean international experiences. This is a huge problem for Canadian institutions. Canadian students don't like to leave Canada. They don't like to go abroad. I don't understand it. I loved studying abroad. It was a super important part of my own education. And I'm in favor of for everyone to get to know another culture, another language, another set of ideas, another way of seeing the world. We also are doing co-op programs. These are programs where you're placed in a business for a period of time. And that model is also evolving in Canada, and we could talk about that if you're interested. And we're doing other kinds of experiential learning where you leave the classroom, you leave the lab, and you go out into the world, you go out into the community, the city, what have you. And then a couple more points. One is higher education needs to become more entrepreneurial. And we need to teach the skills of entrepreneurial thinking in the courses of study as people are with us. It is possible to teach people entrepreneurial thinking. It isn't like some magic thing you were born with or not born with, and if you weren't born with it, God help you. That's not how it works. You can actually help people, you can coach people to think about the world in new ways, to break free from some of the paradigms and stereotypes that they have. It can be around commercial enterprises. You can teach people to be entrepreneurial in business. That's super important. The prosperity of a nation depends on it. You can also teach them to be entrepreneurial in thinking about the big societal problems that we want to have solved or worked on. And there are many different ways that you can go about that. At Concordia, one of the things we've done is we've founded District 3, which is an innovation center and incubator where our graduates and our students can meet. It's a physical space. It's actually two or three spaces now on campus. You can develop a company You can develop a product, you can develop a service, you can meet venture capitalists, you can meet other teammates, you can meet coaches who will help you, you can get advice on marketing and customers, you can get advice on intellectual property protection and all of that. Those kinds of spaces are new in universities in North America. They're maybe 10 years old, something like that, and that's a super important kind of new space for thinking in a different way about what it means to get a university education. It's for sure the case now that you can go on the YouTube and you can find everything from how to tie a bow tie. Whenever I need a bow tie tied, I always forgotten I have to go and get a bow tie. My mother fixed her refrigerator last week. She didn't want to call a plumber. She went on YouTube. She figured out how to do it. My mother is 80 years old. And she was super proud of herself. She got down on her hands and knees. She fixed the refrigerator. So our students arriving now, they don't need us to tell them the equation or to explain this fact or that fact. They've looked it up 12 times on Wikipedia before we can start talking. So what I would say is we're not behind on the technology in our classrooms or in our laboratories so much as we're behind on rethinking and reflecting for ourselves on what does it mean to get an education in this digital age. It is a huge revolution. We're one of the last sectors that is just being touched by it. Right? And how will online learning, for example, how will it change it? And then finally, I'll just say, for the university that figures out how to really, really focus on education of adults and mid-career professionals, there's a huge prize there because all of us now will need to keep up our skills in a fresh way. And I'm not wanting to call it lifelong learning, I'm calling it advanced professional training. So you're 35, you're 40, you're 45, you're 50, and you want to go back to school, not for like a year or 2 years because you're busy and you got a family and you got a mortgage and you got a job, but for micro units, for kind of Lego pieces that fit together. And I think that is the future of education too. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shepard. Dr. Harvey, you have been adopted by the AUB community now for the last 2 years, working in the business school, so at the heart of these transformations, looking at skills. I know that you are also in HR, so you have certainly been looking at this from also very conceptual, but also technical point of view. So I would like to have your insights on that.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And I can't say that any more than I agree with everything that's been said so far. I think these are very important points that have been made, and I won't repeat a lot of what's happened, but let me just talk a little bit from my experience and what I've observed from my working in a business school, but also observing many other business schools in particular, and what makes the difference between those that are progressing and those that are perhaps not progressing. And that may be a way for us to learn about what can be done in Lebanon and in other places. And I think the way to begin is to start to think differently. We have to begin to have a different picture of what higher education is, have a different impression of it. And the way that I like to think about higher education and what we can accomplish with it is drawing upon the proverb that is often ascribed to Africans, is it takes a village to raise a child. And the notion is higher education cannot be treated in isolation, as universities are responsible for accomplishing the full education of a person ready for the workforce or for society. They're part of the puzzle. They're probably leading and facilitating that process, but there are many players and many obstacles along the way. And some of the obstacles that we face, and we face them in all countries, not just in Lebanon, but we face them everywhere, are similar. One of which is a real, if you wish, impediment to creativity, and that's the structure of the higher education system itself and how universities get accredited. So for instance, we have a number of courses that must be given for a degree, a number of credits that need to be given for a course, a number of hours in which you must be in contact with the student, and so forth and so forth. What that does is it leads to reducing our ways of thinking creatively or more creatively about how we might help individuals learn moving forward. So, you know, the system we work in from a government standpoint, an accreditation standpoint, can be something that hinders creativity that we've never stopped to really visit carefully. We often blame universities and we try hard to overcome these challenges, but there is an initial starting point which involves talking about that openly. So that's certainly something that we have to talk about carefully. Another element that I find curious, and I have found this curious because I spend a lot of time working and talking with executives about our students and what prepares them well for the workforce, is I often get comments of, well, if you put this in the curriculum, if you change the curriculum in this way, and the professors, same thing. What about the curriculum? Why don't we introduce this? Why should we still teach this? Oh, this is very important, this should be included. The focus is almost exclusively on the belief that the curriculum is what changes the individual. It's what the education is about. It's what learning is about. And frankly, I've come to the conclusion that it's a small fraction of what learning should occur in a university. It is one important basic component, but there is much more. As I talk to my faculty, I like to say 50% of it is from curriculum, the other 50% are the things that we're not doing and that we got to start doing in some way. So really, we have to change our mindset with respect to the way that we think about where the learning is actually or should be happening within the university. The other one I already mentioned is the notion that the university is the place where learning occurs. It's the place where a university student is educated. I think we have great evidence now from all of our institutions, and I'm very familiar with the two institutions that have spoken so far, is there's great evidence that learning is occurring in many different ways, by involving partners, by involving businesses, by involving corporations, societies, and other institutions in the learning process. It doesn't just happen in the university, and it doesn't just happen within a 3 or 4 year period. It's a continue learning approach to life. And that's extremely important, again, to keep in mind. And finally, we talk about technology as a disruptor. We often talk about this is the big thing that's going to change everything we do, or must change everything we do, and that's true. Technology is a major thrust that will get us moving, hopefully, in a different direction. But with technology comes a great amount of facility in doing other things. It's not necessarily an inhibitor, but an enhancer, if properly used. And I think what we miss or we create as a confusion, is the difference between adapting and adopting. When you have new technology, you don't have to adopt all of technology, but you do need to adapt to technology. You do need to find ways of composing and dealing with it moving forward. Hence, I think whatever strategy we have has to deal with those kinds of issues. And I come back to my earlier point, it takes a village to raise a child, or it takes a business community, in my view, to educate a business student. So we have as our first pillar, as a strategic objective in business, is that we're moving from a business school education to a business school experience. Half of my time as a dean is spent working with organizations at finding ways to engage our students in extracurricular work, learning opportunities that will enhance and further complement their education. And our experience from a collective of business schools that I've seen, and certainly the ones that I've been involved in well over a decade, is that those students who engage in that dual opportunity of curriculum and extracurricular learning are the ones that are most satisfying to the employers that hire them later on, because they've really developed as individuals in the full sense of the word. So we have to begin to really change our mentality everywhere, from the way we structure higher education from a government standpoint, how we think about our ecosystem, our learning ecosystem, and how we involve the partners. And Dr. Jabbra, your point about the high priestess of education, how universities have often thought of themselves as the only and the rightful educational group, that day has ended, and we have to really increase that community. We really have to have a much, much more inclusive ecosystem that involves universities as a partner and not as the sole responsible agent for their learning experience.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dean Harvey. I would now like to ask Dr. Naffi, who is an expert in disruptive pedagogy and is the recipient of the Governor General Gold Medal for 2018, to tell us a bit more about innovation in teaching methods, in teaching contents.
So first of all, Tania, thank you for having me on this very distinguished panel, and I want to share with you, I'm sitting between the presidents of my two alma maters, so this is huge. So again, thank you so much for having me. You were speaking, I was getting excited more and more. Like, I have my 2 examples that I want to share with you of innovative teaching, but I was hearing you and I was like, I need to speak now, I need to speak now to share this. So I'm going to share with you, I teach at Concordia now in the MA program in education technology, and I prepare instructional designers to actually create learning experiences in this AI era. But I'm not going to talk about this today. I'm going to share 2 other experiences from 2 contexts where we actually have this revolution happening concretely too, similar to what is happening in EdTech now at Concordia. My first example is happening at UIT, University of Ontario, Institute of Technology. I was part of the Educational Studies and Digital Technologies program for 4 years. And what we did there for many years now, we stopped using the verb teaching. Now we all facilitate learning. The whole program went online, and we adopted the problem-based learning approach where we don't teach, we facilitate learning through putting our student in a problem. We present an ill-structured problem where many solutions could be possible, but how you get to these solutions is how you're actually developing knowledge and developing your skills. So what happens is that we start with this problem, we examine it based on the learning objective that we set for the course, and then our students, instead of being confined by the walls of the classrooms, the word become their classroom. So they start connecting with the word, they follow hashtags, they follow groups, they follow communities of practice, they watch YouTube videos, they discuss with others, and the skills that they develop, the skills that you were talking about, are being critical about what they were exposed to online, filtering the information that they were receiving, curating the information to use everything that they're finding online to find the solution to the problem that we start with. So this is one example, and what was very interesting in being online, being in a problem-based learning approach, and having meetings both synchronously and asynchronously with students using social media platforms. So we used Adobe Connect, we used LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I had students, for instance, and when we talk about education, it has to be inclusive, it has to be diverse, etc. I had a mother who joined my discussions while sitting in her car, and her son was in his playing soccer. I had another student who decided to go on vacation to Cuba with his girlfriend, but he never missed our classes because he was following with his mobile. And I have another student, and I shared this story like everywhere. He was a paramedic, and he was on duty one day, so he joined my class from his helicopter, waiting for the helicopter to take off. So that was amazing. So this is an example. Now, how can we really have this, because of the connectivity in Lebanon, can we have this extent of going worldwide and being connected? This is a question that we need to think of. Now, my second example, and this is like equally super exciting example, is what's happening at Concordia at Milieu. So we created at Concordia Milieu Make. Milieu Make is a makerspace. And I'm going to read here because I don't want to miss any information. So this Milieu Make, which is led by our maker culture, research chair in maker culture, Dr. Anne-Louise Davidson, and everyone is welcome to come and visit this amazing space. So maker culture has the potential to disrupt education as we know it. The maker movement in education engages students in real world activities. So what happens is that in a maker mindset, everyone can invent, create, tinker, repurpose things, hack things. So what you see in a makerspace, you don't see teachers teaching. What you see a group of students who are grouped around a problem that they are trying hard to figure out how to solve. And when they can't solve it, they connect with other communities online. So they go and connect with other makers online and try to find answers from people who went through these same experiences and were challenged by them, and they bring these experiences and whatever was learned there, and they apply it and solve their solutions. So this is another also way of preparing our students to this fourth industrial revolution, developing their creativity, their critical thinking, etc. So I searched to see whether in Lebanon we had maker movement happening, and it's actually emerging there. So we do have Beirut Makers, and it strives to create awareness about the advantages and challenges of the maker movement. We also have Beirut Fab Lab, which was initiated by USG, and it was the first digital fabrication laboratory in Lebanon, and it has 3 locations. So if you want to go and visit Ashrafiyeh, if you're there, Dikwani and Bashura. And we also had in June 2018, Design and the City exhibition that featured 3D design modeling specialists. So moving this maker movement into our classrooms, into our universities, into our schools would be an amazing step to prepare our next gen students.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think we've had very interesting portraits so far of vision, of practices, of new ways of looking at things, seeing things. I would like to go back to our business partners on this panel and to see whether they are convinced with what has been said, anything they would like to add, anything that would like to comment on from what they've just heard.
Absolutely. I love what was said. I love your passion. It is absolutely amazing. If you ever want to move to Toronto, you could lead Cisco Canada anytime you want. I love the debate that you had, Dr. Shepard, with me in terms of disagreement. So thank you for disagreeing with me. I love when people challenge me. As we focus on what is important, and when we talk about smart campus, campus of the future, classroom of the future, skill development, the way we want to focus on technology in terms of advancing our student in the future. The biggest asset that we have is our kids, the next generation. The one missing thing that I see, and you guys could challenge me on, is in the old days, and even now, we as leaders used to hire, and some of us still hire for IQ. Because people look at the CV and the resume and they say, oh yeah, he doesn't have a master, she doesn't have a degree, so therefore they're not qualified. Yeah. Let me tell you one thing, alert, okay? EQ will have IQ for breakfast.
Yeah, for sure.
The one missing thing that we are not focusing on is how do we teach our kids the EQ part in preparing them for Generation R. You guys might be thinking, what is she talking about, Generation R? So we're talking about the millennials, Generation Y, Generation Z. I was in Germany 6 months ago. Germans are working on preparing the workforce for Generation R and Generation robots. Because our kids, my daughter is with me here today, she's 30, but my nieces and nephews will be dealing with robots. So when everybody talks about AI and machine learning and deep learning, it's here. Siri's been here for a while. She's AI. Every time you hit Google, there's no one waiting for you on the other end. It's a machine. So it's been there for a long time. Our responsibility as a leader is to prep our new generation to be prepared to handle the workforce that it's coming and hitting them really hard. The interesting thing is us. And I tell you us is because we have to change. Because the style you had that worked for you in the past 25 years as a leader and as a teacher and as an educator will not work for you moving forward. Why? For many reasons. We talked about IQ, we talked about EQ, you also talked about adaptability. Well, kids don't adapt that quick anymore because they expect to walk into the workforce and be the CEO of the organization overnight. And if you don't make me a CEO, I'm out. I love their passion, but we have to set realistic expectations. And as leaders, we need to use the servant leadership approach because once you serve that new generation, you empower them, you empower them and inspire them to go out there and make the impact and the difference you want to see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well said. Thank you very much. Rana, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that. I think it's very true. One of the challenges that we're facing is the difference between, I'm not even a Generation R, just the millennials, I think is something that we are trying to grasp, and I'm spending a lot of time trying to understand them so that we can adapt. So we ourselves are adapting to the new generation. But it's true, you're going way beyond where we are thinking. But Generation R, robotics, I mean, we talk about the impact of that on the economy, on how that's going to affect, the future, how we're even calculating GDP growth. I mean, how do you calculate productivity? The way we calculated productivity is not good anymore. So there's so many things that we're going through that we have to grasp, and it's a multitude of facets in our business. I mean, we were just talking this week, executives, about are we going to hire people into our companies that are in the technology world? They don't want to work for pension funds and long-term investors. That's not where they want to be. You're talking about entrepreneurship. This is where they want to be. So we're also struggling with that. So coming back to education, I think this partnership between us, between the private sector, specifically in finance, is extremely important, because you will also allow us or help us understand the new generation to come, for us to be able to integrate them, because we are not from that generation. We worked very hard to get to the positions where we are, and the kids today, exactly that. They're like, well, I mean, I want to be a CEO. I'm like, yeah, but there are steps to get there. And they're like, okay, it's not interesting. I'm going on my bike for a month. Where are you going? So it's a very different world in so many aspects.
Well, thank you. I would like to come back to some of the things that you have said. A lot have been said about the possibility of partnership. We're talking a lot about partnerships between business, private or public sector, and between the education sector. And we are very fortunate to have both on this panel. Coming from a university, I know that we like very much partnership when we have internship and when businesses give us money for chair, for research. But as soon as they want something more, academia and university want to be completely independent in the way of conducting research. So how open are we? Because we need these partnerships. We don't know where skills are going. We don't know how fast artificial intelligence is developing. Well, we talk about the robots, but we don't yet know how fast, when is it's occurring. Yes, it's absolutely true. But how fast is it going to be evolving, and where is it going exactly? So my question is that how open are we from the business side and from the university side into going more into these partnerships? And have you thought about means, about ways of having this partnership evolve between private, public sectors, and also the education? I will let you, okay, Dr.
I'd like to really make 3 comments, very, very briefly.
Okay.
The first one relates to the relationship between the university and the employer. Mm-hmm. In the past, there was a tendency, at least on some part of us as professors, is that we are concerned about the education of young people. We're not concerned about their employability. I think those times have gone by the wayside. I feel very, very strongly that we can educate our young people and provide them with the opportunity to be employed. We have no choice in the matter. I mean, the university cost is skyrocketing. Only to tell parents we're only concerned about the education of your kids, whether they find jobs or not, this is unacceptable. So we can hit 2 birds with 1 single stone. And that is absolutely essential in terms of the relationship between the university and, you know, the employer. The private sector, the government, doesn't really matter who. We need to be quite open about that. The second issue, which is absolutely essential, is experiential learning. This is something that is absolutely essential for nowadays. Because of what I spoke about, we can no longer afford to keep our kids only in the classroom. We need to put them out, either through co-ops or experiential learning or internships, and have really the input from the employers in order really to adjust our academic programs. Absolutely essential. We have no choice in the matter. The third comments, I think our officials have left. It is quite regrettable, and I say that emphatically, it's quite regrettable that higher education in Lebanon has been politicized and monetized. That higher education, education in general, in fact, was the crown, or the jewel in the crown, of what we do as Lebanese. To use it for political reasons or monetary reason is shameful. And that ought to be stopped.
Thank you, Dr. Jabbra. Dr. Shepard, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you for the question, which was about partnerships between the outside world and the universities. I agree with my colleague that the time has passed when university faculty so prized independence as a kind of fundamental value that they didn't want to talk to people in the private sector or crown corporations. I think there are a lot of partnerships now. The question Dr. Saba had for us is, how ready are we? I think there's the philosophical worry about independence, but there's actually a practical matter, which is real partnerships, deep partnerships are expensive. They're expensive for the private sector and they're expensive for us. They're not free. They cost something on both sides. And I know that, for example, in our cooperative education program, I've seen, since I've been president, a sharp rise in the number of students participating. But I also know that costs something, because I need staff members who will be liaisons with the private sector or the parapublic sector to make those partnerships happen. And I really appreciate it when CEOs and other leaders signal from the top, this matters to us, this matters to our workforce, this is a contribution to the health and well-being of our society, that we're participating in this way. So I don't think it's often philosophical. I think it's more routine than that. It costs money to like have the kind of pathways that you need. But I would agree that the partnerships are really fundamental to the next generation learning model that we're trying to pursue, which is to get people out of the classrooms and practicing their skills, their numeracy, their writing, their speaking skills. Those are transferable skills, and they're fundamental.
Thank you.
I'd like to add a little bit in terms of my experience. We have 13 chairs with 13 universities across Canada. We invest over $30 million with universities. And the biggest problem that Canada has, and yes, I'm Lebanese, but I've been out of Lebanon for 30 years, but I know every single Lebanese student would want to immigrate somewhere else, because even in Canada, the biggest problem we have is talent. Actually, hanging on to talent, retaining talent, and going and finding the best talent. I had to hire 3 VPs. I had to go to England, India, and San Jose to bring people to Canada, because you hit a ceiling. Because that partnership that we have between universities, that we hand you the check, we do the ceremony, we cut the ribbon, and here you go, but where's the ROI for Canada? Because our students that are coming here, we're not making it easy for them to stay here.
Agree.
Our government is complicated as hell, because they're like, oh, you can't be here for another year because you need another year to get your paperwork. So we bring all these international students here, and at the end of the day, shake their hand, and your visa expired, get out. So we need a better alignment with the government. We need better alignment with the universities, and higher expectation in terms of, I hand you the check, you hand me your best talent. That's the one thing that we're missing today, that collaboration between the university, the government, and the corporation.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rola. And actually, that was very interesting, and you've made my life easier for the transition, because this was exactly what Vice President Nadia Naffi would have loved to say, is talk about the infrastructure. It's good for universities to do all they have to do for skills improvement, for programs, but working with government and having the infrastructure to keep the jobs, to make way for interesting jobs also is very important as well. And Lebanon is known for having extraordinary education systems. However, people don't stay there. I mean, they would go and start working in other countries. Would anyone like to comment again on partnership? Okay, Dr. Harvey.
You want me to make
okay,
one more comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
It is absolutely essential for the success of higher education to have quality control. It is not acceptable that in Lebanon we have to go to outside the accrediting agency in order to control the quality, of our higher education system. Now, we're an American institute, AUB and LAU. We go to accrediting agencies in the United States. We've been working with the government for a long time in order to get a national system of quality control, and because of the politics, we haven't been able to do it. I call upon the people from Lebanon, from here, to really put pressure on the government to have a national quality control system in Lebanon. Why can't we do it? Why do we have to go to the outside world in order to invite them and tell them, come to us and please assess our programs? It is not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Dr. Harvey, you wanted to comment on it?
I'll make two comments. Thank you for the point about emotional intelligence, because I think we often talk about the challenges of a new world that is technologically driven. And what gets lost in that discussion is one of the major challenges, and this was identified in the World Economic Forum, is that the real preparation from that is in things like problem solving, creativity, ability to work and interact with others, teamwork. These are the things that are emerging as the skills of the future, and not necessarily having people that are the technical experts for all of the technology that's emerging, although that's necessary as well. So that's an important point to drive home, to remember that that's a critical part of our future. And then the other statistic that we often talk about is that 65, 70%, at any number you want, of the jobs are going to be here in the next decade. What are our children going to be doing for jobs? It's probably safe to say that many of the organizations that exist today are not going to exist in the future either, because the world of work is changing. The world of expectations and the economy is changing. So that if we are taking our guidance from employment views now, they may not be the ones that are going to help us restructure our institutions, our universities for the future. So I think that it's a safe bet that we really need to be looking much further. I often say that when we think about changing technology today, we should be talking to the kids that are in elementary school, because those are the people to whom we were going to really be making a change for, as opposed to the ones that are currently with us, who are, frankly, not an indication of what we face in 10 years from now.
Thank you.
I was looking at time. I think I have a comment that is maybe not following your discussion, but I think that it's important to mention, so I'm going to just say it. Since I prepare educators, right? And I prepare instructional designers to design learning experiences in this AI era. I just want to say that we might have all these dreams and all these technologies, but we really need to prepare our educators for this. When I started teaching or facilitating learning with with the PBL approach, with the problem-based learning approach, with no content, it was very challenging for me at the beginning. It's really challenging for educators to let go, to feel that, okay, we can enter a classroom where our students can know more things than we are, that we are part of the group, so this is very challenging. We need to prepare our educators for that. We need to prepare them for working with machines, with the AI, right, that is coming. There are so many things that will be done by AI, and to be able to work with these machines on a set shared goals, it's also very challenging for educators. So we want to do the revolution, but we need to take them with us. Like, we can't tell them this is what will be happening without just throwing them into this chaos. We need to take them and prepare them for this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. So we have only very few minutes left. Can I ask you to do something, maybe give one thought as a conclusion of what you would wish for the education system for the next decade?
There is about 4.5 million Lebanese people in Lebanon, and there's about 3 times 4 more outside of Lebanon. We are, as my father said, it doesn't matter where you throw a Lebanese, they land standing. بالعربي مطرح ما بتكب اللبناني بيجي واقف. Right? So I say this and I literally have goosebumps for a reason. There's so many successful Lebanese people everywhere you go. It doesn't matter what country. The fact that we're not giving back to our country, and some of us are losing the identity and the passion that we were all born with, to give back and make a small country as small as Lebanon the best of the best, shame on us.
Thank you.
I need you all to believe that we're capable of giving back. We're capable of making the next generation of the Lebanese outside of Lebanon as passionate as we are. At 47 years old, I still say I'm a proud Lebanese and a grateful Canadian. So believe in giving back to the country that made us who we are today. Thank you.
Thank you. Rana, one thought.
I have to say it's very
If
hard
not, they're
to
going to
follow
kick us out. It's always to follow, difficult to follow.
This is the first time this happens to me, but very, very hard. No, I need to shake your hand.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm very proud to sit here with you up here and with all of you. And I think education is extremely important in our future for our children. I have an 8-year-old as well, and I think I look to you to help us and to all of us to get him where he needs to be and have a bright future as we did.
Thank you.
And I'm also a proud Lebanese, so thank you.
I would certainly say that what I would hope to see in the next decade is that several of our universities in Lebanon would be a shining example for the rest of the world as to how a country can design a higher education system that takes its population to the next level. Lebanon is very well known for having highly educated individuals who have populated the world with experience and impact. I'd like to see it to have populate and impact Lebanon as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
As president of LAU, and on behalf of my colleagues, the other presidents of our sister institution, I promise you, I commit to you, and passionately so, that we will continue to be a shining light in higher education, not only in Lebanon, not only in the region, but beyond as well internationally. And we need your support. We need your encouragement. And we need your commitment. And together, we will conquer the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Nadia?
Yeah, again, it's super difficult to, to come after all of you. So I think I'm super excited to be here. And again, thank you so much. And yes, we will do it. We can do it.
Okay. Thank you, Nadia. And the last words will be yours.
I think I'm one of the honorary Lebanese up here this afternoon. I'm also an immigrant to Canada, and I often meet with our international students who have come to Concordia to study with us. We have about almost 20% of our students are international, almost 10,000 students. And I just wanted to say, and many of them are from Lebanon, many of them are from Lebanon. I just want to say how much respect I have for international students who make a decision to travel across a globe to get an education. That takes courage, it takes organizational skills, it takes commitment, it takes real vision for their own educations to say, I'm going to go to wherever it is, whether it's to Canada or anywhere else in the world, to get an international experience and international education. I think that is very fantastic, and how I deeply respect that.
Well, please join me in thanking all the panelists. The time has come up. We have another panel coming also. So many thanks for all the panelists. Thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for all the time you have put into it in our exchanges and in preparing for it. So thank you for being here. I hope that this panel on education will continue, will strive, that it will further some collaborations between Canadian, American institutions and Lebanese institutions. So we hope education is at the center of our lives, at the center of the universe, and is going to have many challenges also to overcome and to come. So thank you very much.
And would like to thank our moderator for a terrific job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was wonderful.
Thank you.
you.
You did a wonderful job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to invite
fun.
Ambassador
Thank
Fadi Ziadeh to the stage, and I'd ask that you please, the moderator and the panelists, please stay on the stage for an award presentation.